Here's one of my favorite stretches that I can't live without, and maybe you can't live without it too. Hi, my name is Aulani, and I am the Stretch and Fitness Director at Preferred Physical Therapy, where we specialize in helping people 40 and up stay active and independent, live free from painkillers, and avoid surgery. In this video, I'm going to show you my favorite stretch, which is the pigeon pose. I like this stretch personally just because it not only is going to stretch the outside of my hips, it's also going to stretch my low back. It helps to stretch my glutes. For some folks who are especially tight, you might feel it in a hamstring or in the inner thigh or your adductor. I recommend this stretch for folks just because my biggest complaint that I get on the table is the outside of your hips are the tightest. A lot of our jobs are sedentary nowadays and we're sitting at the desk for far too long. This is a great stretch to help open up your hip. Now, the pigeon pose is usually performed on the floor. I'm actually going to give you several modifications that you can do both in the bed, also just to make it more comfortable on your knees. I'm also going to give you modifications for this stretch that will help you to get the most benefit out of this stretch and not risk any injury. So let's get into it. Traditionally, this pose is performed on the floor, maybe on your yoga mat. I also like to do it right when I wake up in my bed or even right before I go to bed. The bed is also a really nice comfortable spot to perform this if you tend to have sensitive knees. If you can't perform it in your bed, you can always place a pillow underneath your knees. This is how you perform a pigeon pose. Some folks are going to feel this stretch already when they're in this upright position. My knee is bent in front of me and my back leg is placed behind me with my feet towards the ground. Some folks probably want to get a little bit deeper into that stretch. I'm starting to feel it on the outside of my hip on this side, but then if I lean forward, I'm also going to feel it in my glute, sometimes in my low back. For folks who are especially tight, it doesn't mean that you're doing the stretch wrong. You might even feel it in your adductor or in your hamstring as well. One way to get into this stretch easier is to actually perform a lunge first. When we go into this lunge position, tucking that foot down underneath us and sliding back. Your front leg may be at a 90 degree and that's totally fine. If that's more comfortable for your knees, that's perfect. Placing that pillow underneath the knee for a little bit more support, or even the pillow under here if you are a little bit raised off the table. Now, the pigeon pose isn't always accessible, and for folks who have especially tight quads, being able to put that foot behind you is not always doable. So a modification for the pigeon stretch is what I call a 90-90 pigeon stretch. For folks who have especially tight quads, this might be a little bit easier than being able to put that foot all the way back. So this first leg is going to be out in front of you at that 90-degree angle, and the second leg is going to be right behind at that 90-degree angle as well. Then you can add a little bit of a lean forward to get a glute stretch. I usually like to hold stretches for 30 seconds, and if I can do it 2 to 3 times, that's great, especially for both sides. If you're having any trouble with either of these, come in here and we can help you doing a one-on-one assisted stretching, and I'd love to be able to get you into this pose. For additional tips, I recommend our Stretch and Fitness playlist. Here's a stretch that you can do throughout the day while sitting in your desk chair, or if getting into the other pigeon stretch is just a little too difficult. I like to do this if I've been sitting in the office chair for too long. This is just one way you can do it throughout your workday. What you will do is you're going to bring the leg that you would desire to be stretched. So he's going to be stretching the outside of the hip. He's going to put that leg up on top of the knee, resting that ankle on the knee. And as we push down the knee towards the floor, we're actually going to be starting to stretch those external hip rotators. And then if we add a little bit of a lean forward, we'll feel it in our glute medius and glute max. Here's a low back stretch that's usually really easy and what I like to do right before I go to bed. If you tend to have knee pain, you can put a pillow underneath those knees to add that extra support. What you're gonna do is you're going to lean back towards your heels into that child's pose to get a low back stretch, reaching your hands out above your head. If this is a little too hard or your quads are a little too tight, you can always widen that stance to kind of allow for more movement in those hips. You're gonna be feeling this stretch mostly in the lumbar spine. Some folks might even feel it in their mid-back as well. I tend to hold these stretches for about 30 seconds at a time. I like to pulse also into this stretch about 3 to 5 times. So for some folks who this might be a little bit harder to do, pulsing into that stretch kind of allows more movement, basically warming up that muscle for elongation. This stretch is not just for folks who have low back pain. I think it's great for everyone. No stretch is a bad stretch. I'm going to show you the cat-cow stretch that's really safe and effective and also easy to do. This stretch is really good for your mid-back because it's helping you to increase mobility. For folks who are having a hard time in weight-bearing stretches, this will be a little bit more accessible and safe. Here we'll see rounding of the back. This is that cow motion. And then the cat stretch will be rounding of the spine. Now you see here, Nick is actually rounding with his rib cage. Instead of doing that, what not to do, I want you to actually round, tucking in the pelvis towards the navel. You might feel that a little bit more in that mid back. Also really important to have a strong neck during these stretches. When we're doing this cat position, our head is going towards the ground or the table. And as we're pushing that back out, our head is straight up towards the ceiling. This stretch is a really great way to unwind from the day or even get started and get that blood flowing. I like to do 10 of these at night and 10 of these first in the morning. So here are some really popular stretches that are both safe and effective. Check out our Stretch and Fitness playlist for more tips and tricks on how to stay mobile, and also come into the clinic where I can help you out.